Next, the Board of Commissioners would like to present certificates of recognition to Mr. Frank Phillips. Is there anyone here from Hope Church? Okay. Well, I don't know your name. I was looking around before the meeting, but anyway, I'm going to read the certificates for everyone, and then all three of you can come up. The third person is Mr. Raymond Phillips, in honor of their efforts. And Frank, I think I will just read one of these and insert all their names. Certificate of recognition, the certificate is presented to Mr. Raymond Phillips, Mr. Frank Phillips, and Hope Church, Hope Methodist Church, in recognition of outstanding service to the citizens of Paulding County by providing a pavilion to assist Paulding County and the State Department of Family and Children's Services. And this is presented by the Paulding County Board of Commissioners. Go ahead, Frank.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If the folks that we mentioned, or the chairman mentioned, if y'all could come up to the front, please. We're delighted to have y'all here today, and this was a great thing that y'all did. I've talked to the DFACS director that's assigned to Paulding County. She's the interim DFACS director, and she said that these folks stepped forward and helped them quite a bit. DFACS is located on county property, and they work with us as governments do. And these folks stepped forward and helped build a pavilion out there that's going to assist with their visitation, their family visitation. So we're delighted that they're here. I want to thank Commissioner Hart for working with me and bringing this to our attention and getting these folks here today. So we're very pleased, Mr. Chairman and Board, that they're here, and thank you very much.
Tell me your name. Ben Cathy. This is Ben Cathy, the pastor. So glad to have him. This is Frank Phillips, and this is Noah Phillips, and Raymond Phillips. So y'all put names with faces here.
No relation.
Hey, thanks for that. Mr. Chairman, if I could, I also believe that our County Attorney, Jason Phillips, is also not related to those folks.
No relation whatsoever.
Just want to make that clear for the record.
All right. Thank you all so much for your work. We have no invited guests this morning. Bid awards. We have an award for the purchase of an in-car camera system to WatchGuard in the amount of $493,865 to reported on by Ms. Pollard.
I'm going to keep this very brief, but our sheriff's office currently has two vendors that they've been working with, so they've got two types of cameras and actually several types of cameras within those two vendors. So they're trying to consolidate so that they can put everything onto one server when they move into the new system in the new center. And this is going to require about 95 cameras to be replaced to put into those vehicles. And we compared cost because WatchGuard was the recommended vendor to purchase these. We've not had as much problem as we did with Mobile Vision. So we compared it with state contract, and the state contract WatchGuard camera system was actually about $95 higher than each than this quote they provided to us. So Colonel Hunton's here, and he can tell you how it will accommodate the sheriff's office to be able to use one vendor or one type system instead of several.
No, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning.
With this camera system, we've had better customer service, and the quality of the footage that's retrieved off the in-car cameras with WatchGuard has been a lot better. Nothing against the other company. We've been with them for years. But one of the issues that we're having is of those 95 that we're having to replace is we've got 3 different generations. 2 generations are no longer supported by the software from the updates that they installed into the software, and I've actually had to take cameras out of the cars because they're not operating correctly and functioning properly. And to be, we want to be transparent. We want to, be able to provide those videos and things for open records and things of that nature. And, it does not look good at all when you tell them, well, yeah, there's a camera in there, but it's not working properly. Automatically, they think we've done something wrong. We're trying to cover something up, and that is not the case in this situation. So I've already taken the cameras that are obsolete. I had them ripped out of the cars immediately. So we do have vehicles that are operating currently without any camera systems. With this, the reason I came to Tabitha to try to get the ball rolling on this is having to replace those 95 cameras. We can only do about 12 a month. And I've got to try to get ahead before we move into the new facility in the spring, so that we can try to get as many of those vehicles done as possible, so that we'll be getting everything back up and running. Obviously, the ones that I've taken out are going to be the first ones that we put in. Time-wise, that it makes sense because you don't have to take anything out. We've already taken them out, so all we got to do is do the install. So I'll be more than glad to answer any questions that y'all may have or anything.
We had good backup material, so thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all.
The second bid award is to award the contract to construct a deceleration lane on Macklin Road at the Water System Maintenance Facility entrance to the lowest bidder, Kennedy and Tillman LLC, in the amount of $141,588.30. Ms. Pollard.
On June 28th, we received bids for this decel lane. We had 6 participants, and they ranged from the low bid up to $242,055.10, and we're recommending award to the lowest bidder, Kennedy and Tillman. And so Lori can add more to exactly what this will provide for the water system.
In 2016, when we moved to the new maintenance facility on Macklin, our entrance moved further west along Macklin Road. The original decel XL lanes along Macklin were not changed at that point. For the traveling public at Macklin, the current configuration causes confusion about turning, as well as impacts traffic. And we've been working with DOT, and in fact, they designed this decel lane for placement along Macklin Road. We think it's imperative for public safety in that area to have that decel lane. We have not, neither DOT nor the water system have worked with Kennedy Tillman, but we did check references on them, and they came with some very strong recommendations by people we know, and we have, as well as being our low bidder.
Any questions? Thank you, Ms. Pollard and Lori. We don't have any reports today from committees and departments. We have one individual who has signed up for public participation on an agenda item. The topic is a zoning change, and it's Mr. Scott Williams. Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Good morning. There's a proposal before the board for a zoning change regarding adding self-storage in across from the Publix shopping center on Ridge Road. Well, that's right adjacent to the entry to our subdivision at Trace Ridge. That zoning change would adversely affect the Trace Ridge neighborhood, we would be staring down at the warehouse appearance of self-storage. It would have a significant impact on our property values. There are 60 homes in Trace Ridge, and they generate probably $180,000 of revenue in property taxes every year. Is that worth taking a chance and approving these self-storage units and having those property values devalued to a point that they're certainly not offset by the taxes generated by the self-storage? Self-storage units generally have a higher rate of crime associated with them. We don't need that association in our neighborhood. We're a quiet neighborhood that we've enjoyed finally a re-establishment of home values. They're starting to come back up, but with this unit being put in there, those home values are now going to drop again. So, it's a losing battle. There's another storage facility just a mile and a half away down 61. There's additional self-storage over on 92 at the end of Ridge Road. We don't need a self-storage in a quiet neighborhood that will disrupt that quietness, that lack of crime, etc. What's the advantage of going to B2? B2 is supposed to have a low impact, and these units will certainly have a high impact on everybody's lives out there. There's probably many more points that I have not considered, but I really would like the commissioners to consider my arguments against this rezoning, as it would be a negative impact on our neighborhood right there at our entrance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. And I was thinking ahead to the 7 o'clock meeting tonight where that is an agenda item. So we have another individual, Mr. Morris, who was going to speak on the non-agenda item as far as this agenda goes, but I'd entertain a motion at this time that we change the order and allow Mr. Morris, while we're on this topic, to go on and complete his remarks. Do I hear a motion?
I think that makes sense. I'll go ahead and make that motion.
Motion by Commissioner Davis. There's a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Hart. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll take the public participation on non-agenda items. And Tommy, come on forward, please.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Last time I was here, I think I said something about the wonderful new Dairy Queen, a new business in the New Georgia community. I'm not here to talk about the wonderful new business for a storage unit today. I don't live in Trace Ridge like Scott does, but I live in the New Georgia community, and we have a sense of community there. And I'm really concerned that if you approve this rezoning request tonight, it will change the character of our neighborhood. We have B1 zoning there now, which is consistent with the village at New Georgia, the shops, the small shops, restaurants, things like that, that are a benefit to the people that live in that community. It also will those things will bring in revenue to the county as well. B2 zoning, based on your procedures here, talks about B2 is designed to move away from B1 to B2 because of the negative impact B2 can have on adjoining properties. Trace Ridge is an adjoining property, and Scott has pointed that out about the impact on his community. So I hope you keep that in mind today during the Planning Commission meeting and your vote tonight. So we have that intensity there, and B2 we don't need to have any negative impact on the residential area, not just Trace Ridge, but there's some other residential areas close by. The rezoning could also have a negative impact on the daycare center, which is close by, and it would not really provide a service that we need in the New Georgia community. We do have a current storage unit there, a mile and a half away. It's zone B2. That's appropriate. It's on a busy highway, Highway 61. It's not adjoining any residential areas per se. So that's fine. We're not opposed to new businesses coming in B2, where it's an appropriate location. Also, I think something is really important here. I checked a little while ago before the meeting started. 609 people have signed a resolution to you asking you to deny this request, asking the Planning and Zoning Commission today to recommend denial to you. 609 and still growing. That is tremendous, I think, when you have that much input from the New Georgia community. I said earlier about the village in New Georgia. We really do need a lot more out there. The B1 zoning, the village concept, that's what we need. We need those kinds of businesses coming in there. And I support you and what you're trying to do to bring in new business to the county. We want a lot of that new business, but we want it to be within the current zoning of B1. In summary, it simply makes no sense to me to change to B2. If you change to B2, the barn door's open. You're going to have more requests coming in for that type of zoning impacting residential areas. So I would encourage you, when you vote tonight, you would vote no on that rezoning. Thank you.
Dave, could I quickly just make a note for those of you here in the room, as well as any who are watching remotely, unable to be here? There will be the issue that is being discussed by these two gentlemen will be considered by the Planning and Zoning Board, which will meet at 2 o'clock today in this room. That's obviously open to the public, and it's also streamed online if you're not able to be here. But if you have an interest in that, you can take note.
Thank you, Ron. Under the consent agenda, let's discuss one consent agenda item, which is to appoint Kimberly Friedman to the Paulding County Library Board for a 3-year term running from July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2022. Is there anyone that would like to move that consent agenda item to regular business? Hearing none, we'll leave it as a consent agenda item. We have no old business. Under new business, number 1 is a public hearing on the fiscal year 2020 budget. And as Ms. Pollard comes forward, while she's getting set there, I will open the public hearing, the official way we're supposed to do this, and Tabitha Pollard is giving our background and review of information.
Another file, a PDF file that was on there, and now it's gone. Jeff can figure out where it's went. I don't need it right this minute, but I will need it before I'm done. Okay, now for the 2020 budget, we've talked about this and talked about this and talked about this since March. And we've had not public hearings, but we've had, town halls, we had a budget workshop. We've tried to gather as much information as we could from the public. So we issued the chairman's proposed budget on June 1st, and we have continued to work on the budget. I'm gonna talk about some of those, continuations since June 1st, but I didn't wanna issue another, I wasn't really prepared to issue another budget draft, before this meeting for anybody to have time to review it enough to hold a public hearing. So I've got a slideshow, and then I have a handout, and I'm gonna go through both of those maybe as quickly as I can. So property tax, revenues, other tax, licenses, permits, intergovernmental. We have quite a bit of revenues coming into the county. So 40%, or about 40% of that revenues comes from property tax. We're in the process of holding those hearings. You take your reassessment value, multiply by the millage rate, and it equals your tax levy. Other taxes that are included in this are title ad valorem tax, sales tax, franchise fee tax, insurance premium tax. There are several taxes that are included in that. The growth that we've seen have been in title ad valorem tax as well as sales tax. Paulding sales tax receipts have increased significantly over the past 18 months or so. And some of that I'm sure is due to higher prices, but most of it I would like to say is due to people shopping more in Paulding. So continue to shop Paulding. The higher we can get that number, the lower we can get the other tax dollars. Title ad valorem tax is the amount of tax that you pay when you purchase a new vehicle. So it did away with birthday tax a couple of years ago. That tax has it decreased originally, and then it has continued to increase some over time, and the state has changed the percentages, so we expect some growth there. Licenses and permits, those are basically your permit fee, your business license, intergovernmental. Those are grants. Currently, we only have a couple of grants that are included in this because those are the only grants that I'm sure of. As all governments operate on different fiscal years, so everybody has a calendar year. That's what the IRS uses. Then we have a fiscal year. Our fiscal year ends June 30th. The state fiscal year ends September 30th, I believe, and the federal is definitely September 30th. So they're staggered. Charges for services, recreation, you pay for what you use within that. That's just an example. Several of our functions, departments have charges for those services. It's an attempt to recoup some of that cost because you don't want everybody having to pay if they're not using those services. So if we have the authority or the ability to recoup some of that cost, we do, and that's included in the charges for services. Fines and forfeitures, that comes from the court system. So if you pay a fine, and obviously when you pay a fine, it's sent to lots of people. So and lots of different funds, and we'll talk about some of those when we get to the handout in just a minute. But this is the portion that goes back to the general fund, so back to the county government. Investment income, we've seen some growth over the earnings that we've seen over the past. It was really, really low 2 years ago, and it's continued to increase, and hopefully will increase even more. But we have a budget. Our budgeted is somewhat conservative. And then you have contributions. Believe it or not, people do give money to things that they're passionate about. So sometimes we do receive funds. This is included in this is the kiosk, I believe, and then animal control have people that volunteer some funding to go towards their operations. Miscellaneous, those are things like rent, jail telephones, smaller revenue sources. Basically, our revenues as proposed, increase about $7.6 million in the upcoming 2020 budget. This gives you a picture of the title ad valorem tax. That blue is the 2019, and the red is the 2018, so you can see some of the growth. June's is estimated. It's not in yet, so we should be seeing that in the next couple of weeks. Again, we're trying to close out the year, so those monies are received by the tax commissioner. Then at the end of the year, the tax commissioner closes their books and they send it to us, and we'll have that number to report later this month. Sales tax revenue, this is basically, as you can see in January, we have a spike. That's obviously December. So your Christmas shopping comes in January. Those numbers have been up for the first 6 or 7 months, and then we've seen some leveling off. But hopefully we'll continue that growth. Overall, the blue is higher than what the blue continues to see some growth if you take out factors such as Christmas and when people are really shopping. Again, we're at our maintenance and operations, so how we spend our money. These are the expense side. 35% is to public safety. I'm just going to talk about the large one that's made up of the coroner, the sheriff, detention office facility, the marshal, animal control. Public works is made up primarily of DOT, but you have DOT, stormwater, recycling, or some of the departments within that function, or the services within that function. And then your general government. Your general government is necessary to be able to provide all of those services. So commissions included in general government. Finance is included, HR, public information, information technology. And that's all for the presentation. And let's see if did he get it up? I have a handout in the back that looks like, it's not supposed, was he gonna put it on there? I have a PDF that was on here, it was right there.
Gotcha.
Now it's gone.
I'll get it back for you.
Okay.
Jeff, if you can go to your laptop that you have in the studio and just pull up, what was the name of it?
Millage rate.
Millage rate. It's a
It's a-
PDF.
It says
PDF.
public hearing, and I think it had millage rate, PDF.
PDF. So just switch over to your laptop.
It's not on a laptop.
We can change that.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. I'm I'm not gonna open up anything else. I don't see it, but everybody should have a handout that looks like this. So if you didn't get a handout that looks something like this, there are some in the back, I believe. And in the first page talks about revenues, and it lists every fund that we have. So across the top, you have general fund, fire tax, 911, special courts. Those are the different fines and fees that you see. Solid waste, SPLOST, debt service, CIP, and water and sewer. Water and sewer is a flexible budget. There we go. The water and sewer is a flexible budget, so it's not included necessarily in today's conversation, because if they don't have the income, they don't have the money to spend. So they operate more like a business than the government does. So for the general fund side, we have currently an estimated use of fund balance of $3.2 million. And we have our revenues estimated at $76.7 million. And then on the second page, you'll see the expenses, and the expenses are by department. And again, you'll see general fund, fire, 911, all of the different funds are included here. If you'll turn one more page, you'll see a side by side. So if you wanted to see how those expenses had changed from one year to the next, you could look at, since I have this, let's see. Scroll down for me, Jeff, if you don't mind, to page 4. Yeah, there we go. To this page, and it gives you a summary of what the budget was last year, approved budget, and what it's proposed at this year, along with any changes. Those changes are primarily consist of some operating, as our budgets, our home budgets are changing some because of increased cost. So are the county budget's increased operating. So our paper, it's increasing. Therefore, we're trying to use technology to reduce it. Our technology is increasing. But to be specific, to be helpful, hopefully, I've included the largest cost that we have on the next page, which is the additional personnel request. So these are personnel that hopefully we can look through and determine what kind of betterment to the service we will be providing. In the original budget that was issued June 1st, all of these had a 1 beside them. They were all in there as being approved, or most were, with some reductions, but not a lot. Over the past month, we've gone through and reduced some of those. Some of those have been reduced by the departments themselves. They've found other ways of making that department work without the additional personnel, or they have maybe it was enhanced service that they were going to provide. Doesn't mean that the request will go away. It will likely come back next year, but we've worked closely with them to be able to make reductions to this list, and we've also staggered some of the positions. So you cannot hire. We won't have a budget until August 13th. So to budget for that position July 1st, you won't spend those funds between July 1st and August 13th. Well, we can't hire everybody on August 13th. So traditionally, we have had hire dates of October 1, January 1, and March 1. And that way you use 3/4 of a year, half a year, or a quarter of a year. Most of these, if they were approved, they're approved on 3/4, knowing that if they have more than one, you'll balance between the two. If you hire somebody in October, then you might not be able to hire your other person until March to make those numbers work, if that makes sense. So I thought for purposes of today's public hearing, it might be beneficial to give an actual list and also show a way that we've made reductions to this. This has reduced the budget from, the proposed amount was about 2.5 million, and this reduces it down to about almost just under 1.5 million. So it's $1 million reduction. If you will scroll down a little further, you'll have capital expenditures. So, one more page, Jeff. There we go. Capital expenditures, and these are a list of the additional equipment and assets that have been requested by the departments for approval to be able to assist them. And some have high mileage vehicles, some have equipment that maybe they have put off and haven't purchased and would be a benefit to them. Information technology, we purchased a lot of desktops and computers this year, but it's too large of a project, it's expensive, and we can't get it implemented if we bought them all in 1 year, so it's kind of a phase-in approach. A Microsoft license agreement is included in that. That's our ability to create spreadsheets, Word, to be able to communicate with the public. Technology is continuing to increase. So with that, that's just an overview of basically what our budgets look like. It's been out for review since June 1st. And I also have, I guess, a clarification, but it needs to be mentioned here as well. So if you look back at the columns with all of on the front page with all of the funds, the fourth column from the right, you have the debt service column, and we have 11.6 million in revenues, and we talked a little bit earlier about where those revenues are used, and we have 9.8 million of that amount is used to fund the courthouse, conservation property, and the jail. So that totals $9.8 million. For the revenue bonds, which consist of all of the airport, the IBA, as well as in 2013, the IBA issued some debt to resurface streets, and about $4.5 million was the original amount of that debt. And those bonds combined have an annual payment of $1.8 million. So I think I misstated that amount a little bit earlier. But just to clarify. And we are proposing a little bit of an increase in the millage rate this year because we paid for the bonds for the jail last year from fund balance, and we had growth in the digest, and we used that growth to put towards without having to increase the millage rate until we were actually seeing the building come out of the ground, and that takes place this year. We've got to actually increase the millage rate a little for debt service to be able to make that payment. So unless any of you have any questions.
This is a part of the public hearing for the budget, so I ask if any citizens would like to come to the microphone and make any comments or.
I'm used to doing this. I'll sign in. My name is Nancy Highlands, and I've been in Paulding County forever. I do understand the budget. I understand that one of the things on the budget is to give the employees a 5% raise. They got a raise 2 years ago. Like most private companies, it should be a merit-based raise, I think, and not necessarily across-the-board raise. I mean, I never got a just across-the-board raise at any company, and I even worked for Wellstar. But we always got merit-based raises, and I think that in itself could say. On the other side, one thing we know for sure right now is the economy is humming along wonderfully, and the future looks like it's going to keep humming. And I believe we'll be grabbing more and more sales tax dollars to help with our budget. I know one thing too is that the money is beginning to turn loose, because you can talk to any of the brokers out here now, and we do have investors trying to look at Paulding County for potentially coming into Paulding County. So we need to make sure we're working smart. I know we're looking at our budget here every year as far as our operating budget. But yet we know we're offset because we have more homes and businesses. One of the things we need to do to bring in businesses is to put sewer in. And as long as we keep raising the operating budget every year, and people are paying more taxes, I think to ever get sewer in here, we're probably going to eventually have to do a SPLOS or something just to get our sewer. Well, you can't expect the homeowners to even want to pay even more, like a 1% or a 0.5% SPLOS money, even for sewer, when you continue to raise the operating budgets. Assessments this year killed me. I live on my mother's property, which is an estate. My house is nothing. In fact, it needs a lot of work. But my property tax, just on the assessment and where the millage is now, went up $400. So to add that and then to add an increase in the millage, it really kills, especially a senior who, through the year, they're living on a fixed income. Most of the time their properties are paid for because they're either inherited down or they've worked their whole life to pay for their home. And then at the end of the time, when you get to that, and they kind of based a little bit, but when you go up $400 based on what it was last year on values, and then you add more to it, it's really hard for a senior because they have to pay. They don't pay it in a house payment; it's paid one time. So we do have a great tax commissioner who helps us some, but I'm just saying it's really hard on seniors, and I always come up and say seniors and people who are on fixed incomes, please think of them when you're looking at raising taxes. Thank you. Everybody knows where I'm at.
Any other citizens that would desire to come forward and speak today? I might ask Tabitha a couple of questions that I haven't clarified. And talking with you in the office as many times as I go in there, I forget things. But on the ad valorem taxes, the state scheduled to increase the percentage the county gets, right? That's
Yes, sir.
okay. And there's also been legislation about the online shopping, and that's something that everybody in there, I'm sure, shops online. To accrue taxes out of that, do you have any up-to-date information on, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but.
Yeah, I do not have any up-to-date information, but I do know that they're trying to collect that sales tax so that they can get it to the counties where it belongs.
No one else wants to speak? The commissioners have any other comments?
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to, my name is Deborah Seaver, and I'm one of the real estate brokers that she mentioned. And I understand the tax increase, and you always hear from your neighbors and friends and everything, about the taxes continuing to go up. And I'm telling them, well, taxes will go up because your values are going up. So be grateful for that. But I think with that, like Nancy said, on top of maybe a millage rate increase is going to be a little bit burdensome on people who are living on fixed incomes, and who is not living on a fixed income. I think we all are. One of the things, though, I would like to propose is, we can, in doing a budget's real simple. They're just kind of numbers, right? We do it on our own home, but in the county, it's just at a bigger scale. So we can either spend less or bring in more money, right? That's kind of what we're looking at, right? So why don't we look at ways of generating more income? So one of the ways, other than through taxation. One of the ways that we can bring in more income is let's be really business friendly. Let each of you as post commissioners sit down with your constituents, sit down with people in your area, brokers and realtors and everything who do this for a living, that bring in business, and develop some type of a plan. Like I've sat down with Brian, and we're continuing conversations about the Cedar Crest, about Seven Hills connector. You know, what I want to do is, a lot of times when I'm marketing vacant property, you know, just putting a piece of vacant property out there for sale doesn't get a lot of traction. But if I do a proposed site plan saying, okay, I can see based on the area what would be really good here. So I go to, you know, architects or whatever, and I have them draw like a proposed site plan. Had a property not too long ago that as soon as I put that together and put it out there to market it, people are like, bing, bing, you know, and they see that use and they're like, yes. So why don't the post commissioners get with some of your constituents and let's look at some corridors that need to be filled with businesses. Sit down with them, see what you think that a proposed use could be. And let's go out and market that proposed use and get it out there. Let's bring in the businesses to support, because we're talking about, yes, the online shopping, and that is kind of, you know, a challenge, but we, you know, our hands are tied with that right now. But what about people going outside of Paulding County to shop and to dine because they don't have what they're looking for here in Paulding County? Right? So I see that with me being in the north end of the county. A lot of times, a lot of the people are going up north, you know, going out to Cobb Parkway to be able to shop and to be able to dine. Well, if we had everything like that, the best that we can, right, local, then they're going to stay there and our tax dollars are going to stay there. So I think it's just a matter of being very creative, being proactive, you know, being intentional about bringing in these businesses and bringing in additional ways of bringing in income, rather than just by the you know, the other burdens of taxes and so forth. Let's try to bring in our, you know, increase our tax base by increasing businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Seaver, some great ideas. Any other citizens like to come forward? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, at this time, I will close the public hearing on the fiscal 2020 budget and move on to new business item number 2, which is discuss action to extend the terms of engagement initially set up in March and approve a contract with the law firm of Bentley not to exceed $150,000. Reported on by Ms. Lipman.
Thank you, and good morning, Commissioners. Mr. Phillips. If you recall at the last meeting, I gave an update on what staff has been working on since April with Mr. Bentley, and we have come close to the end of the initial funding we received, and so we asked him to submit another letter of agreement so we could continue this process. And just as a reminder, we sort of have a three-pronged process. We are looking at updating our development ordinances with an ultimate goal of having a unified development code, so everything that a developer would need to know when they were building a piece of property out would be in one document that's easy to read. We're also looking at our process. We're trying to make things a lot more electronic, so that people can submit paper via electronic means rather than paper, and make it easier for staff to review them. And the third element would be, once the economic development comes on board, to have them work with us to bring new businesses to the county. Our proposed extension would not exceed $150,000, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
What kind of time frame do you think?
We've been working since April, and we're probably about a third of the way through, so I would probably project another 9 months.
And how often do you guys meet?
We meet weekly. The water system has started meeting bi-weekly, weekly as well, is on a separate basis with one of the attorneys to work on getting their ordinances in order.
And who's involved?
Fred Bentley Jr. is the lead attorney, as well as Linda Brunt with his office, and there are also some staff members in his office that are available to us on the county side. We have community development staff, Department of Transportation staff, water system staff. Every week we kind of think of somebody that's new. IT has worked with us. This week we've extended an invitation to environmental health to come to our meeting because they are key in the process. And the city of Hiram, since we are their building permit and development division for them, they are participating in the process as well.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Ann.
I'm
Great.
next too, so just.
Okay. All right, then you're also going to discuss action to adopt Ordinance 19-03, adopting amendments to the Code of Ordinances for Paulding County, Georgia, Chapter 18, which is Buildings and Building Regulations, and Chapter 58, Article 4, Fire Protection and Prevention.
This is a really good example, sort of on the previous agenda item. When we find the need to make a change to anything that's development related, we don't just make one change, we look at it comprehensively. This change initiated because we wanted to change Section 18-70A, which is permit intent, which addresses the expiration of permits. Right now, you have 6 months to build a project or continue working. And then if not, you may have to, if you didn't do anything with the 6 months, you would have to renew your permit. We proposed changes to extend this to 1 year. I know weather, labor concerns, all of these may factor into a house primarily taking longer than 6 months to get built. The average time from a building permit to a CO has been 7 months. So we made a proposal to change that time frame from 6 to 12 months. And we also included language that requires a minimum of one inspection to be performed, and that way permit staff can check if they've had a permit inspection within 6 months, they're fine to keep going. If not, there's a $200 renewal fee, whereas before it was the 100% of the permit fee. But when we wanted to do this change, I decided to look through all of this, and I have several other changes. I don't know how much in detail. Mostly it's just to update things that match the state requirements. The state has some mandatory and permissive codes, and we wanted to make sure those were in there correctly. There's recently been a House Bill 493, which is the Private Permitting Review and Inspection Act. We made a few changes to some sections to be in compliance with that. We also, to be more electronically friendly, thinking forward, we are going to require one set of plans submitted electronically. We would like to, right now the Zoning Board of Appeals serves as the County Construction Board of Appeals, and effective January 1st, we'd like for that to be a separate board with members appointed by each of the Board of Commissioners. We, and this is an example of sort of how our development review process has worked. Once I started reading this, I realized if you wanted to obtain a blasting permit, you had to look in not one, not two, but 3 different places to find all the required regulations. So we took all of those blasting operations and moved them to Chapter 58, Article 4, which is operated by our friendly firemen back in the back. And the last change, Article 9, was a ordinance adopted, I believe it was in 2011, to charge telecommunications and billboard operators an annual fee to inspect their properties, and that's something that we have not done, so we recommend striking that altogether. So I know that's a lot, but I'll be happy to answer any questions about the changes to both Chapter 18 and 58.
Thank you. Great report, great work, and great progress for the county. Anyone else? Okay, we get you again, huh?
Yeah. I didn't want Tabitha to get all the attention, so I turned in.
New business number 4 is discuss action to consider resuming consideration of the application of rezoning case 2007-04-Z for the August 27th, 2019 meeting at 10 a.m. And direct the staff to prepare and submit the required legal advertisements.
This was a case that was discovered when we did our PRD research. For more information about the exact case, Chris Robinson from Planning and Zoning is here, and I will also defer to Mr. Phillips, our legal counsel, to give any advice on bringing this back. This was a rezoning case that was 73.1 acres from suburban residential district and agricultural district to planned residential with a commercial component and a B1 portion for 176 lot single family residential, and it was tabled in 2007. And if this is something the board would like to reconsider, we would need action from you placing it on an agenda and directing staff to advertise legally in the legal newspaper and on the property physically as well. So if you have any questions about the case, Chris is here, and about bringing something that's been tabled this long up, I'm sure Mr. Phillips can answer.
Anyone have any questions? All right, thank you very much, Ann. New business number 5 is discuss action to approve an allotment request in the amount of $90,000 for the completion of the 2018 subdivision resurfacing project. We get a new and bearded George Jones.
Glad you noticed, Dave. Let me give you some background on this request. There was 4 additional streets that we're adding to this contract. The original contract was for $3,789,706.56, and that was resurfacing paving work on 150 streets and 38 subdivisions. These 4 locations, I'll start with the first location. It was Highlands North subdivision located off Cartersville Highway. Little background, there's a City of Dallas sewer lines that are surfacing the subdivision running along the streets on Scotland Drive. On Scotland Drive itself, which is the main road in the subdivision, there was 5 locations where sewer manholes were raised significantly over the roadway section. The roadway section had sank over time, and there was about a 4 to 6 inch difference in elevation. So the work involved there, going out and milling out the areas 50 feet on either side of the manholes and paving a new top coat asphalt surface to provide a smooth, even ride. We requested quotes from 2 of our contractors who were paving at the time in the county, Bartow Paving and C.W. Matthews, and Bartow gave us the low bid at about $10,200. And so we elected to do that work with this contract as we save on mobilization costs, and also because they're doing such a high amount of paving, we get a lower unit price. The next area was Winding Creek at Bentwater resurfacing. Again, we used Bartow Paving, who was performing the existing subdivision contract work for that. There is a 0.6 mile section on Winding Creek Drive where it had a significant amount of alligator cracking. And we also had 2 other streets in that subdivision, Turtle Rock Place and Turtle Cove, which never had a top coat of asphalt placed on. So, like I said, during the course of this contract, we noticed that. We decided to take care of it with this contract and also do that resurfacing on Winding Creek Drive. This amount of work was roughly $124,000. There was a little bit of money left over in the contract, so we're actually requesting $90,000, which is 2.4% of the contract total for this allotment request.
Any questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's the conclusion of our regular business. We have some master gardeners here that probably should be recognized. Mary Carol, you want to say anything about your group?
Just that I love them and they're the best volunteers in the county.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. We have completed the public participation on non-agenda items already, so we do need executive session for real estate, and I would entertain a motion that we go into executive session.
I'll make the motion. We go to executive session for real estate.
So a motion by Commissioner Davis. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Hart. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned for executive session.